I remember going to church with my mother, but I had questions how we were worshipping the Son of God. And we heard news that one of our classmates, he had got knocked over by a big truck. He died instantly. Arriving home and her opening the door to me in hijab, you know, I've become Muslim. She said to me, I've done my job. I no longer need to be your mother and you're on your own. To be rejected by your mother is very, very painful. I couldn't find where I belonged. I felt incredibly lonely. I called my mother and I said to her, please come and take me home. And I stopped practicing Islam. So I took off my hijab. I stopped praying. I remember going to church with my mother. I would go to church and spiritually and emotionally it would be very, very fulfilling. But I had questions. I couldn't understand how we were worshipping the Son of God. I couldn't understand how in one moment he was the Son of God and the next moment he was the Lord. And he was a man. He was a human being like myself. So I questioned that. And I remember one particular day speaking to the pastor of the church, asking him this question. And he said, just have faith. It was at that moment that I knew that this wasn't for me. I grew up in a predominantly Muslim area. It was predominantly a Bangladeshi area. My father's background is very, very interesting because he was actually born a Muslim. My grandfather was Muslim. When my grandfather died, my father left Islam. When he met my mother in London, he wasn't a Muslim. I was about 8. I would go to the living room window, lean on the living room windowsill, and I would be able to see on the ground floor opposite the road from where I live. And there was a makeshift masjid. I could see into the prayer area of this kind of makeshift mosque, and I would see them bow and prostrate. And I would find it fascinating as a child, and I would, you know, rush to the windowsill, you know, a few times a day just to kind of capture this. And I took the shawl and I threw it onto the ground. I was copying what I had seen in the masjid, and I made sujood. I prostrated and I said, God, and I remember I said, God, make them stop. Fast forward 2 years, I was 10 years old. We heard news that one of our classmates, he had finished school, ran over the road to purchase some playing cards that were very popular at the time. And he had got knocked over by a big truck and he died instantly. And school wrote home to all his classmates and invited them to his funeral. So I begged my mum to let me go. And there were a few of us who were non-Muslims in the class. And she said yes. And I remember saying to my friend, Layla, I said to her, can I borrow a scarf? And she said yes. And I remember walking into East London Mosque. I think I was the only non-Muslim child that went to the funeral. And I prayed Dhuhr and I prayed the Janazah prayer thereafter. And I remember in the Dhuhr prayer making sujood and feeling this sense of closeness that I had felt when I made it, you know, 2 years earlier. And that was kind of like my second experience of Islam. Classmate at secondary school now, and she was a practicing Muslim. The situation between her parents was actually far worse than mine. Her mum, you know, a victim of domestic violence. She was beaten up regularly. And yet, despite that, she was calm. She was at peace. Your family situation is far worse than mine. I'm falling apart, but you've got it together. How are you able to kind of get through this? And she said, it's my faith. It's my faith that gets me through. It was very, very difficult after that. Arriving home, knocking on the door, and her opening the door to me in hijab. I've become Muslim, and this is me now. It was a very painful moment when she said to me, she looked at me, I was 17, and she said, I've done my job. I no longer need to be your mother, and you're on your own. And that was very, very difficult. To be rejected by your mother is very, very painful. Very, very painful. I felt incredibly lonely. I called my mother and I said to her, please come and take me home. And I stopped practicing Islam. So I took off my hijab, I stopped praying. I spent a couple of years like that, and then the emptiness became too much. And I knew that it was because I was living a life that didn't align with my beliefs. And so I started to come back to Islam slowly. And I remember, you know, people say that the Shahada was like the sweetest moment of their life. But coming back to Allah, coming back to Islam organically, a journey again between me and my Lord, it was beautiful. It was so sweet. She began to ask questions about Islam. She wanted to become Muslim and she ended up taking her Shahada. Alhamdulillah.